Nature, the forgotten cure. That is going to be the topic of this episode of Qi Life. So I'm in Tskaltubo today, which is near Kutaisi in Georgia, the Republic of Georgia, in, well, either the very edge of Europe or the very edge of Asia, Central Asia, depending on how you want to define that. And I am visiting some really interesting places today. So bear with me, it is going to be related to Qi, as this is a Qi Life vlog. So I'm visiting all around this town here. There are all these abandoned sanatoriums, or essentially spas, from the Soviet era. And they're really fascinating places to visit. I'm going to put up a whole lot of footage here as I talk, both of the spas and also just some shots of the surrounding area as well. And there's a whole lot of things that I find fascinating about this area. Part of it is just visually, it's just really interesting. These once grandiose buildings that are now run down, well, in various states of disrepair, a lot of them basically falling apart, some parts not in too bad condition, but just fascinating to see them, to see nature reclaiming what was once just pure natural, overcoming these old buildings and breaking them down, returning things to a natural state. Partly also from the history of this, because during the Soviet era, this was the place where the elites came for holidays. This whole area, all around this town, there's, I think someone said maybe something like 13 of these big, magnificent spa hotels. And so the elites came here for holidays. But also, this was used medically as well. So these spas were devoted to balneotherapy. If you don't know what balneotherapy is, basically it means to bathe in spring water, normally with lots of minerals in it. And this was taken very seriously, back some years ago, not just in the Soviet Union, all around the world, people used to take this type of thing more seriously. Not just balneotherapy, bathing in the spring water, but cures from nature. It used to be not uncommon for people to be prescribed to go to the seaside or to the mountains or to somewhere like this where there were springs to bathe in, and to benefit from nature to help heal them of whatever it was that ailed them. And this, of course, well, it was true in the Soviet era, and this was something that would be prescribed. People would come here, they'd be prescribed to spend a week or 2 weeks to come to one of these sanatoriums and spend time allowing the power of nature to heal them. In this instance, specifically water, but of course there are other aspects of nature as well. And at the end of the Soviet Union, all of the spas were just abandoned, just completely left. And you can see from the footage that I'm showing, they've broken down since then. Not all of them are fully broken down. Something else that's interesting that happened was in a few of these, after one of the wars in this area, the Georgian government took in refugees and housed them in some of these spas, because they, at that stage they weren't as run down as they are now, and they were essentially all these empty hotel rooms. But then they haven't gone to further resettle them, so a lot of those refugees are still living here. So in case you're wondering, I tried to stay out of the refugees. Well, I suppose you still call them refugees after all this time. But I tried to stay out of the way of the people living here, because it is their home. I don't want to invade their privacy too much. So if you saw a part where people were living, I just kind of tried to stay away from that part. But still had an interesting look around a lot of these places. It's interesting looking around the buildings. You can see a lot of the rooms and things. You can't see too many remains of the baths themselves. You can see a few, but a lot of it is, you can see some remains of tiled walls and and things like that, but I guess that's what happens over a long time when something isn't maintained. There are a couple of, I guess, newer or maintained facilities in town that are still operating, maybe without quite the grandeur of yesteryear, but there's still some of that going on here. And it's interesting, apparently in the last couple of years, the government has sold a couple of these properties to private investors with contracts that they have to, the buyers have to guarantee to rebuild something on the site and create a certain number of jobs and things like that. So that's going to be interesting to see how much of the old buildings they restore versus build new, and what happens to the whole town as a result of that when some of these hotels come back to life, and maybe some of those spa services come back to life as well. So what does all of this have to do with Qi and Qigong? Well, when we practice Qigong, we're working with energy, and we do our practices, and often we focus very much on the different aspects of the practice itself, on our mind, our body, and our breath, which are key components of most Qigong practices, and how they work with and affect our energy. Maybe not as often we actually give full consideration to the energy around us and how that affects us, because I think that can be considered part of Qigong as well. In fact, definitely it can be. The ability, because we work in Qigong on the ability to tap into energy around us, and therefore the quality of that energy around us can have a really, really significant effect on us too. If you've done some of the Long White Cloud Qigong courses, you'd know that we do get into this to some extent, to a greater or lesser degree in some of the courses, and particularly in Mysterious Qi, to some extent in Qigong Walking, and some of the others we touch on this at least a little bit. One of the things that is, I think, interesting about Chinese philosophy is I think it gives us a bit more scope, actually, to work with the energy of nature, not just using practices like Qigong, although I think this is really integral to understanding our health and our well-being and our interaction with the environment, but also just understanding the environment itself, because often with different types of nature cure, it's focused very much on just one aspect of nature. For example, balneotherapy, with the water. Other things are, maybe focused on the air of the mountains or the air of the seaside. There are some more modern, well, are they modern? It's hard to, modern expressions of ancient ideas coming about, which is really good. There's an emerging forest therapy movement where people are making use of going out specifically into the forests and using the healing power of being amongst the trees as part of their healing. Chinese philosophy gives us a framework to look a bit more broadly at that and consider the interaction between different elements within the environment and how they affect us and how we can combine them harmoniously to get the best result from them. So not just considering one, but considering several together. Because of course, Chinese philosophy, we work a lot often with 5-element theory. And so we appreciate the importance of the energy of the earth, the energy of metal or the mountains, the energy of water, the energy of wood or trees, the energy of fire. And when we combine our understanding of all of these together, it really does give us some really good scope for really tapping into the healing power of nature in a potentially a more powerful, more effective way than just focusing on one aspect at a time. So I think it's a shame that in many ways we have, as a society, we've moved away from our appreciation of just how powerful nature can have an effect, a positive effect on us. I mean, we see the power of nature all around us. You can see it in these buildings getting broken down by nature. Nature, the power of nature has the ability to reset, to return to natural. And it can do the same thing with us in our bodies as well. It can help to reset us and return us to our natural and vital state too. And I think visiting a place like this is a fascinating reminder of that, a reminder of the focus that we once did collectively put on the healing power of nature. You know, they built these grandiose buildings dedicated to people being able to spend time with the healing power of nature. Now, of course, you don't need a grandiose building to do that. You just need nature itself, but still fascinating to see these things, and hopefully an interesting video for you to see all these things that I've been exploring today. So I suppose now might be a good time for me to put in a plug for our upcoming Qigong Certification program in Thailand. It's coming up next year in May 2020, and because that is going to be in a beautiful place in nature, surrounded by natural energy. So of course we are going to be focusing on working on and learning about our own energy, working on that with Qigong practices. And that's just that little bit easier when you're surrounded by beautiful nature and to have that natural energy supporting yourself as well. So if that's something you might be interested in, I am going to put a link in the description below. Aside from that, if you've enjoyed this vlog, if you think it's interesting, if you're looking forward to some more, I am going to be doing a whole lot when I'm in China, and I think it's less than a week now. Like, comment, subscribe, share, all those good things, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.